Chris Wilken. I have a security company. It's called Let's Fix Security, and we do a whole bunch of things such as security consulting for medium to large enterprises. One of the things that we've gotten into is WordPress and WordPress websites, securing those websites, and even hosting websites as well for some of our clients. So that's how we got kind of into the whole WordPress community here. And I'm going to be talking today about encryption. So I don't know how many here are familiar with encryption, how it works, or anything like that. A little bit, kind of.
What's the flashing?
I'll take it again.
Photographs. Photographs. So that's what I'm going to talk about. But I don't want to limit it just about encryption. If you do have any questions about security or anything like that, I'm happy to talk about those topics as well.
You're talking about SSL.
Yeah. Well, so great that you bring that up. Yes, it's more complicated than just talking about an SSL, which we'll get into.
Okay.
So hey, thank you for that little intro here. So when we're talking about encryption, there's a lot of marketing out there. And I don't know if any of you have tried to buy an SSL certificate or a which is problematic, the naming of that, but a lot of companies call it an SSL certificate. Has everyone done that to get to your website? There's a lot of, let's call it miscommunicated information, such as here. Some sites say, hey, we have a certificate, it has strong SHA-2 and 2048-bit encryption. And then you have another site over here that says it uses the strongest 256-bit encryption. Well, when I'm looking at this, 2048 is bigger than 256, but this is saying it's the strongest. So what's going on here? Really confusing. I hate this myself just because it's so confusing, and when you get into the details of it, it's even more confusing. And a lot of companies are just trying to make it simple so that somebody can buy something on their website. So what I'm going to do from this presentation is kind of make it a little easier for everyone to understand. It is a very esoteric and nuanced topic. I'm still learning things about it every day. So it's one of those things that you have to spend a lot of time with to really understand the detail. So
Can you explain the difference between those two?
I will explain the difference between those two, but you'll have to wait till the end. So when we're talking about encryption, like what you mentioned, SSL encryption, the way it's communicated in the industry is really, it's talking about multiple things. And these are those multiple things. Certificates, there's a protocol, there is an algorithm that is how you exchange keys. There's also algorithms that are encrypting the data. And then finally, there's algorithms that validate the information that you're exchanging, which are called message authentication. And when somebody uses the term SSL, this is really all the pieces that they're talking about. And that's the simplified language. I know you're writing a bunch of things down. I can make the slides available if you would like.
That'd be perfect.
Would that be helpful?
Okay. You don't have to take pictures of you.
Then you don't have. You don't want to take.
Well, I mean.
I understand.
We're going to keep writing down the hard questions, so.
Yeah.
So, but if you do want to take notes or anything, feel free to just know
I
that.
can't read my notes, so this is much better.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'll send it out to everyone so you can see it and be more educated, or
Sure.
post it on, I don't know, SlideShare or my website or anything like that. let's talk about certificates. So I think everyone's familiar with this, where in order to get the HTTPS or the padlock or the green mark, depending on what browser you're using, you need to have a certificate. And that's kind of like the first step to get encryption. And really what that is you have to go to a third party. Some of you, based on your hosting provider, you could just go to your hosting provider and they have some relationship with a certificate authority where you can get that certificate directly from your hosting provider. You can also go directly to a certificate authority and get one there. You can also get a free certificate through Let's Encrypt. I don't know if anyone here has a Let's Encrypt.
I use all my certificates, so Let's Encrypt. Excellent.
Good. That's excellent. One of the things that I really like about Let's Encrypt is it gets everyone to have SSL certificates. I still, this day, have the conversation with different businesses where they say, I'm not an e-commerce site, I don't really need SSL. And so my first point is, well, how are you logging into your website to do administrative activities? They're like, oh, I pull up this page. Well, then when you're logging in, you're sending out your username and your password to administer your website in plain text over the internet. So if you happen to be at a Starbucks or Coding Dojo, for instance, and there's somebody here playing around, playing with the wireless, they could actually see your username and password being passed to that website and authenticating.
Okay. And what if you use a VPN when you do a wireless? Does that protect you?
So, great that you bring up the VPN question. Yes and no. It depends on the VPN service, the specific VPN service that you're using. There are some that are good and some that are bad and marketed well. What's that? Yeah, right. Protect your internet. The only problem is the keys that they use. All of your data is going to the VPN server, and they're seeing everything that you're going to. So they may sell it. Yes. As with anything security, there are some really good things, really strong things. There's some weak things. Sometimes people do nefarious things as well. So you have to do some research on.
Companies. I never heard any.
Yes.
All of them.
So we can talk about some specific VPN companies or the ones that you use. There's a good site that I can send you that's done some research on all the different VPN providers out there, whether they have some strong encryption, whether that encryption, who's maintaining the keys, things like that. So with that being said, when you are getting a certificate, really what that is that if you are going to a website as a user, that certificate is using a third party to say that website is who they say it is. And so that's the whole point of using a certificate, is to say that the website that you're going to, like you're going to Google, that is authentically Google and not somebody else's fake Google, for instance. And this does happen. Doesn't necessarily happen much in the US, but there are some other countries that will reroute traffic to certain sites to their own sites because they're doing monitoring of dissidents or anything like that. So there's all sorts of studies. You go down do some Google searches on what some countries do with their citizens' internet searches.
Can you check that? Do a trace route, find out whose routers they are and stuff, or not?
I don't know on that one. There's.
What was the question? Can you just do a trace route to find out if your traffic is being sent to somebody else or not? Or is there another way of doing it?
I don't really know, yeah, that's.
So there's some things with that. So like let's say you're at a Starbucks. The first hop that you're hitting is Starbucks Wi-Fi.
Right.
So Starbucks is seeing that Starbucks/Google, right? But they or any coffee shop, that coffee shop is seeing any of your unencrypted traffic that hits that access point, or they have that ability.
Obviously, you know, because I'm having all kinds of problems with VPNs at coffee shops. I get shut down all the time.
We'll talk about that a little bit later then. So
You look like a robot.
there are those services that actually do that, where they prevent VPNs from being used at different places. So that's another item. Another piece that I want to talk about when it comes to certificates is the keys and the hashing algorithms. So if you've ever purchased a certificate, sometimes, depending on who the provider is, you may get options on your key size. So that's 1024-bit, 2048. Generally, I haven't seen that one much. Some certificate providers will actually have the option of elliptical curve keys. Now, I know that slide that I showed earlier, where it talks about 256 versus 2048. It depends on how you're defining that, which means strength. So if you are using an RSA or a Diffie-Hellman key.
What does RSA mean?
What's that?
What does RSA?
RSA stands for Reves, Shamir, and something. It's actually not a company. Well, the company is RSA, but the type of key that they're using was named after the people who invented it, who also founded the company that uses their initials, and it's all the same, and it can be confusing. Yeah. Yeah, but the basic thing to remember here is that if you're using elliptical curve keys, this would technically be the equivalent, this would technically be the equivalent here. So basically, whenever you're seeing bit length for keys, you have to better understand what they're talking about when they say bit length. Everyone just talks about, a bit, a numbered bit key size. Yes. So
do you have a recommendation using, say, a WordPress site versus a WooCommerce site, where you're exchanging
yes,
far more sensitive information? Or I might be getting ahead of myself.
I do, and I will actually show you here. So the key piece is, if you're using an RSA key, it should be 2048. For the most part, most of the certificate providers that you will find out there, you're going to get an RSA key, and it's going to be the 2048 until that size no longer becomes valid, and then there's going to be a push for a higher key length. It is very hard, at least the searches that I've done, to find certificate authorities that actually provide elliptical curve keys. There's some, they're at a higher price point as well. So if you're looking at, Let's Encrypt, or if you're looking at something that you purchased, it's generally going to be RSA.
Right. So I don't know if you're going to be going there, but I'm evaluating getting an EV certificate. Is it worth $400?
Yes. Glad that you brought that up. So if we jump back here, right here. So this was one here where it talks about the DV, OV, and EV-SSL certificates. Really, the only difference in any of those is the warranty that the certificate authority provides you, and that there's some language in the warranty that they provide you where it says if there is any problem with the certificate, then they will reimburse up to a certain dollar amount.
But it looks so much cooler in the URL.
It does look cooler in the URL. If that is worth the extra money, then totally go with it. From a
company name goes in the URL.
Branding.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's green.
Exactly. I think that's powerful.
So for some people, that's what they look for, and that's where they buy. If you're a smaller shop that's selling things, maybe that's what helps people buy on your site versus your competitors.
But that's only good for so long because Google is going to, in the Chrome browser, phase out the green and the black, and it's just going to be gone. So I don't know if the EV is still going to have that. But
I think it'll still be.
Have you seen an EV?
yeah, I know what it is.
Okay, with the company name
Yeah.
embedded in it.
That's cool. It's really cool, but I'm just
That's
saying that.
what I'm paying for, I think. Nobody's gonna read the warranty. You know, they're not gonna click on it. Oh, wait, here's 15 minutes I can.
Yeah, it is really, like, from a security standpoint, it is purely a marketing thing.
Really?
There is no additional benefit you get from an encryption standpoint between any of the DB, OB, EB, anything like that. It is purely a marketing thing that they're providing as opposed to
You're kidding.
improving encryption. No.
And you send in all your business information.
Yes,
exactly. Which makes you believe that it has some extended.
I will say this.
application to it.
I will say this. There could be some merit to it. The challenge with that, though, is that not many. I had to change my behavior in buying things, whether I'm going to EV site versus a non-EV site. But that's also because I understand the nuances of it. I'd be curious to see other people, say for instance your customers, if that makes a difference in their buying behavior or not.
I feel like half this presentation is the words and the other half is the smirks on your face and his face.
Well, I mean,
that is part of the presentation. It's the.
When he's giving, I mean, this is excellent advice. It's almost the same advice the whole advice in your SEO business, where you're in a workshop like this, and the guy says, "Oh, well, you really need to be number one on Google on the first page," and people buy into that, thinking that they're going to get business that way.
But you do.
But I mean, I won't get into the debate of that. I'm just saying that this is sort of like that.
Absolutely. Right.
It's sort of like the same. So we can debate it all night long, and it's
right. And the only way to tell if that is true or not is to have one version of your site with an EV, one version without the EV, and see what happens when people buy. But then your costs of
Find a
having
seal
two separate
vendor that
sites.
offers AV.
Yeah. Right.
Some of them will, like Norton. So Raylan jumping in, test it first.
Test it first, but from a pure encryption, security standpoint, there's no difference.
Okay.
It is more a marketing plan than anything.
But I believe the warranty is higher for EV certificates, right?
Yes, but the language of the warranty makes me
More restricted, okay.
makes me say it's more of a marketing play. And the reason if you look at what the warranty says, it is a problem with the certificate. You are more likely to have a problem with your server configuration, which we will get into a little bit later, than a problem with your certificate. That means that, and I should pause on that because there are instances where providers have screwed up the certificates, which I will show in a little bit here. So going back to this, the other piece as well, when you're buying a certificate, you get a choice of hashing algorithms. You should not be seeing today anything around MD5. If you see MD5 as an option for buying an SSL certificate, find someplace else to go. Similarly, you should not be seeing SHA-1 as an option as well.
So you can still reset your password in the MySQL database using MD5, correct?
That's a different application of that hash. Yes. So, but really, what this hash algorithm does is it validates that the certificate that you are being provided is the valid certificate. So if somebody altered that certificate in transit, the hash wouldn't match that certificate that's being sent. So that's what it's providing. Using the MD5 hash in a database is a different application of that hashing algorithm.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
So we talked about this. where the warranty comes into play. Here's some examples of actual certificate authority screwing up. And this is where, I don't know if anyone heard about the Symantec certificate fiasco, but basically Symantec had some problems. Google strong arm, force, convinced, however you want to call it, them that their practices of validating requests for certificates was wrong, and then issuing certificates was wrong. They ended up selling their certificate business, and they had a lot of brands. So, like if you've ever seen VeriSign is a Symantec brand. I think Thwat is also a Symantec brand. I think there's Symantec branded certificates as well, and there's a bunch of other ones. Basically, Symantec had some bad practices that they were doing. They had to sell it off because they couldn't fix their infrastructure to meet the standard for certificates.
So they're fixed now?
They sold it off to DigiCert.
Did they fix it?
They are basically just, the way I understand it, they're just, they bought the brands, and that was it.
But you had to change, I'm pretty sure, I talked to my web host, and he said, you know, I beat the deal. I was clear, but he said if you had it, you had to get a new certificate.
Yes, so here's the key piece, and I'm going off of memory. I think if you have a Symantec branded certificate, it will be distrusted in at least Chrome by September 30th of this year. So it is a very good idea, especially if you're doing e-commerce or anything like that, to find a new certificate provider. And I believe that's September 30th, but you can Google that just to be sure. But there's been other cases as well, such as there's a Chinese certificate authority that gave out SSL certs for somebody impersonating GitHub, and then people were going to the wrong domain basically for a time. There's even been instances where hardware manufacturers have intercepted certificates. So they've installed their own certificates on devices. Lenovo did this, I don't know, two or 3 years ago, where they had a certificate that was part of their own store that they said was a trusted party, and they were basically seeing all of your traffic that was going from your Lenovo computer out to the internet. So it is something to pay attention to and really watch who your certificate authority is installed on your computer is or in your browsers.
So certain hosts allow you to get your site secure without any certificate just by placing it on Cloudflare or CDN.
Yes.
And they will make the site secure. I mean,
yes.
Is that kosher?
So there's a nuance to that as well.
Okay.
And I'll do a little drawing here.
Yeah, because I totally understand Cloudflare.
You don't or do?
I don't.
Don't. Okay. Basically, what Cloudflare is, it is a a content delivery network. It's a little more than that though.
Like Akamai or something?
It's kind of like an Akamai. Yeah. You can think of it like that. But basically, what it is so if you have your workstation, you're hitting Cloudflare's server, which is, say this is your website. It's doing some backup or mirroring of your content on your web server. So the connection that you're having here is encrypted. Depending how you configure your website to connect with Cloudflare, that may be encrypted. That's an option. It may not be encrypted, or it may be encrypted but not totally trusted.
So do you have to ask Cloudflare for which option again?
No, you have to configure it on your server. And then, so if you want the full certificate, to full encryption going from end to end here, you have to still get your own SSL certificate, install it on your web server, and then have Cloudflare trust the web server. So you're also installing a certificate here.
Why don't you use Cloudflare over Akamai?
It's just a content delivery service. So that
Is
is
content delivery service just caching?
it's caching. It's doing some things also with like
None
distributed
of that.
denial of service.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
content delivery networks have servers globally, and they put all of your content on those servers. So if I'm in Chicago and I dial up my website, it's not served from Tenafly, New Jersey. It's served from Ohio, I believe. It just moves all your content a lot closer.
Right.
Encrypting it at the same time.
Doesn't that what Akamai does too?
Yeah.
Akamai does
Google
very
does it,
similar
everybody
thing.
does it.
Right.
Everybody has a security arrangement with everybody.
Yeah, but the key point though is that when you're using Cloudflare, only this piece here is encrypted with Cloudflare. This piece here may not be.
So your admin login may not be secure.
So your admin login will be secure to Cloudflare.
Right.
It will not be clear. It will not be secure going from Cloudflare to your server. So whatever hops it's making over the internet, that will be unencrypted unless you configured it to be encrypted. So
Can you do that with a virtual machine?
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Physical, virtual, anything. You still need to have the connection with Cloudflare to your server encrypted. Otherwise, that going from this hop here, unencrypted. Or it might be not trusted as much because you can also set Cloudflare to ignore any SSL errors from here to here. So it's almost like being unencrypted. Wow. So if you forget to renew your certificate,
Right.
it will still make the connection to the back. But that will be unencrypted. Not many people know that. It's a small nuance. From a security standpoint though, this is good though. Because my goal is to have more encrypted websites. So this is good. If you're going to a website and just downloading data or reading something or anything like that, that is great. I want to see that because that means there's no intercepting of this traffic here. Now this back end, I'm worried.
Do you suggest having 2 different computers for browsing? Secure and unsecure one?
What I typically do is I have one browser for like my main things that I'm needing to do, and then if I'm just surfing, I'll use like a tablet or something like that. So
it's a separate machine with a different browser.
yes.
So I have a tablet I'm using as an unsecured browsing device. Kind of help.
Yes, that's if you're going to many different sites, and this is also the challenge as well. If you go to like the New York Times website, there have been instances where their ads that they're displaying on the New York Times actually was sending malware to your computers.
I hate all that.
And
I get all this. I get it.
yes, that was a problem. They kind of cleaned up the ad networks a little bit, but still there are instances where ad networks are sending malicious things. But yes, I mean the other piece as well is there have been sites. If the site that you're going to is hacked, you may be going to that site and it may be trying to install malware on your computer as well. So yes, don't get scared though.
Well, the only reason I'm scared is because like my girlfriend had a keystroke logger and she loved it because it only served ads for things that she wanted. And then so I cleaned it off and then she put it back on. And then her kid put it back on. They love the keystroke logger. Come on, you guys, stop it.
That is painful. Sometimes the hardest thing with security is the human aspect of it. You had a question?
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, like a lot of these security stuff nowadays is not like your run-of-the-mill viruses. Nowadays they're meant to mine bitcoins, for instance. Like
Yes,
yeah.
that's another one. I'm glad you brought this up. So I was doing some research into this earlier this year. If you don't have an encrypted connection here, and there is, say, you're at a coffee shop or wherever connected to the Wi-Fi, and this connection here is unencrypted, what can happen is whoever's on this access point here can actually inject crypto mining to the website, so now your computer is mining cryptocurrency. So
You can download the Udemy class for $10 to find out.
yeah, and I mean, right, you can find YouTube videos on things like that all the time, but that's the other reason why you always want an encrypted connection to any website you're going, because anyone who's on the network or near the network could be injecting malicious things, and you might not know.
So how do I know if I'm at Starbucks, if I'm actually looking at the Starbucks network, or Joe Blow who was duplicated there?
Yes, and that can be done as well.
Or if you're connecting to somebody else's PC, Starbucks network,
Yes.
it's masquerading as them.
So you don't know that unless you have HTTPS.
Say again.
If you have an HTTPS or a secured, SSL secured or TLS secured connection to the website, that gives you the confidence or knowledge that nothing's being intercepted there.
But he's mimicking the
Can't
Wi-Fi
do
network.
it. He wouldn't be able to do it given the way that this certificate works. So if I have my computer here and you're connecting through here,
Right.
and you're going to Google, I would try and have a fake Google page, but then I would also have a fake Google certificate. You would get a certificate error going to that Google page. And I'll show you that in this next slide right here, actually. So I don't know if you've ever seen some items like this.
Yeah.
These are great because it tells you something's wrong with a secure connection. They're terrible because if you look here, the error is error cert date invalid. What does that mean? If you're not familiar with how encryption works, error cert date invalid doesn't make sense, or error cert authority invalid doesn't make sense. What this is telling you is, of course, your connection isn't private, but what the secondary piece that it's telling you is the certificate that you were given, such as in that example that I was giving you, it's being sent by an invalid certificate authority. So my computer is giving you a fake certificate, and your browser is saying that's not the right certificate.
Not everybody's HTTPS certified.
And that's why you want everything HTTPS, is because you'll get these error messages if something odd is happening. If it's HTTP, you'll never know.
Did you configure the Chrome browser to display the not secure warnings in the browser settings?
You know what? This is actually a site that I like, and it's a good one for examples. But it's called badssl.com. So if you just go to that site, you can see the different scenarios that you can encounter by going to different websites and the error messages that pop up in your browser.
But you and I, us here in this room, we know that's a bad site. Should be clicking with plain Jane.
Yes. Well, and here's been a problem with some clients of mine.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually seen this in help desk knowledge base articles. If you see this, just click advanced and click it's okay to go on.
Yes.
Right? And so it's okay when you're on an internal network at a large corporation, but it teaches you bad behavior because when you are not in the safety of a large corporation internal network and you're browsing on the internet, somebody sees this and they're like, oh, all I need to do is click advanced, click proceed to the site, and I'm at the site. But you may be going to a bogus site.
Nowadays, big corporations is even going away from that, from their match of their certificate to do away with that.
Yes. Some organizations are up to speed on that, and they're fixing those things. Some organizations are behind the times.
Small organizations.
You know what? I've seen it in very large organizations too, where You would think that they have the team to do that, but you know, it's not this team that has to do the certificate. It's another team, and the network team doesn't want to do it. And
It's a project.
right, it's
Oh, yeah, I had to tell CHA to do it on their vendor portal.
CHA.
Yeah, Chicago Housing.
Oh, yes.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I went to
Oh, yeah.
and told them, I said, I'm a vendor, and every time I go, it was by Informa or some big vendor portal provider. And I went in, I went to the lady, I tried to listen. I said, you know, my information is in here. I'm putting my information in about my company. It's not secure. You need to fix this.
Right.
And she was like, what are you talking about, Dante? And so she fixed it. And I told her, I said, nobody else is going to tell you.
Very, very true. Actually,
Nobody's
from a real estate agent standpoint, this is something that I see all the time with real estate agents and their websites, is that they didn't buy an SSL certificate, it's HTTPS, and then they're saying, you know, contact me if you're interested in these things, and there's nothing about the privacy of a person's name or email address or contact information that's going to their website.
Right.
So that is something that I've seen as well.
It's just better health insurance.
Health insurance, yes. So hopefully from this, people start seeing we need to have more HTTPS. But with that being said, it also needs to be properly configured. One more thing before we get off certificates. If your site is hacked and you have an SSL certificate, revoke the certificate and put a new one on. And the reason why is if your site gets hacked, your certificate or your private key may be exposed. And so there could be somebody else that mimics your site and nobody would ever know, and the certificate authority would actually say it's valid.
So when you say revoke the certificate, replace it.
That means you have to go to your original certificate authority, wherever you got the certificate. You go in and you tell them to disable the certificate that you got and to reissue a new one. And they will do that. That's always for free as part of the whole certificate process. Yes.
But if you're using Let's Encrypt on the self-serve, how are you going to go back?
You have to do a revoke on the Let's Encrypt. So there's a if you're doing like the command line or script, there's a command that you put in to revoke it and then re-request a new one, and that will be invalidated. Now the other side of it, which is also problematic, is some people's browsers are not configured to if you go to a site, sometimes the connection to the certificate revocation list, you don't make a connection there, and they'll still go onto the site. That's another nuance that you have to be aware of.
It's cache.
It's not a cache thing. It's more sometimes the browser or sometimes the revocation server isn't up, and so if your browser is set up to just ignore that error, you can then go to the site. So that's another nuance.
So do you think through the cPanel tools, Let's Encrypt renewing is the same thing as revoking and getting a new one, or not?
No, renewing, if you have Let's Encrypt configured correctly, you'll do automatic renewals with the Acme protocol. Revoking is an actual, you'll have to go in and issue a command to revoke the certificate and then get a new one created.
So the only real benefit of Let's Encrypt is that their expiration dates are only like 3 months out or something like that.
Right. And so there's another piece to that. Most purchase certificates you get for a year, and that's generally what it is. Let's Encrypt only allows it for 90 days. I tend to like that a little bit more now, just because sites, if you're not paying attention, the sites get hacked more frequently. So now you don't have to worry about hitting the right certificate revocation server and anything like that, because that sometimes becomes a problem. So.
And then Acme renewal, I never figured out how to do that. Is that really simple, like a couple lines of code?
Let's Encrypt, depending on your stack, can be a big pain in the ass.
Oh.
It can be, like if you're using Windows, it's super easy. Depending on the version of Linux that you have and the, if you're using Apache versus Nginx or anything else, it can be a big pain in the ass. So, like Amazon, for some reason, is like there's problems with Let's Encrypt with how Amazon has configured its stack. Yes, it's.
I'm using Debian on Google, so I gotta figure it out with Debian 9 now, but Debian looks.
There's a couple websites, and I think I have that in this presentation that you can go to, and it will tell you like exactly what you need to do. So
Just real quick, I actually put in my own Let's Encrypt certificate today for the first time.
Oh, yeah?
And everything.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's right.
And I'm on SiteGround. I just moved there with a bunch of sites, and they said in their notes as I activated the Let's Encrypt, they will renew it in perpetuity until you tell them not.
Oh, great.
So that just simplifies that issue.
Yes, some hosting providers are really good about that, where they make the whole process of getting a certificate very easy. Some make it a little more challenging just because they might be selling or they might have something else going on. So let's get into protocols. So this is where we were talking earlier about SSL or TLS or anything like that.
Yeah. TLS 1.3 is coming like now, right?
I don't know if any day now, but it's coming.
This year, right?
Maybe I don't know.
Before WordPress 5?
I don't know.
Before we die.
At some point.
At some point about TLS 1.2 or something.
So yeah, basically what this is, it's a way that between a client and a server, that encryption keys are exchanged, the way keys are generated, the way that data is encrypted, and then how that data is authenticated as well. So these protocols have been, I don't know, since the early 90s, but basically the thing for everyone here to remember is do not use SSL2. I still see configurations, default configurations where that is enabled on virtual servers. SSL3, do not use as well. When we're talking about PCI, so if you're doing any type of e-commerce and you're taking credit cards, PCI says that you cannot use SSL3, and that was, I think, a year or two ago. And just recently, they said you cannot use, as of June 30th, you cannot use TLS 1.0.
That's only if you keep the credit card information on your server.
No,
Yes.
Not at all. Absolutely not. There's a nuance to that. It is not the credit card, because when you're exchanging the information here, PCI's focus is the transport, processing, and storage of credit card numbers. Your transport is occurring through this connection right here, and so this needs to be TLS 1.1 or higher.
Maybe that's what I've been seeing. It's when it expires.
It should be the TLS 1.0.
Oh, okay.
But anyone who tells you the opposite of that.
So how would I find what version of SSL that I have on my website?
Oh, wait for the end of the presentation.
All right, because then
I will
I'll circle
show you
back to that.
Yes.
I want to see what you're saying.
This is, I don't know, there's probably like, 50 more or something like that. I'll quickly go through some of these things.
We'll stop rudely interrupting.
Algorithms, key exchange algorithms, bulk cipher encryption algorithms. Really the main thing that I mentioned, the way keys are exchanged, the thing that you want to make sure your server is configured for is using forward secrecy. And that, if your server ever gets compromised, whoever compromises it has your private key. And so any messages that have been exchanged, if those messages have been captured, can now be decrypted with that private key. Forward secrecy puts an extra layer of protection so that even if that private key is compromised, the messages exchanged are not. So when we're talking about PCI, you need to have forward secrecy with the taking credit card numbers, because you don't want that information to be compromised.
Does that include those TLS standards?
This is separate from the TLS standards.
Oh, why?
It is a complicated.
So we can hire you, right?
There is something I think security is additionally complicated because it perpetuates the employment of security people.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm cool with that.
Everything has a price, right? Cipher encryption algorithms. So when we're talking about key exchange algorithms, the key thing to remember here is RSA. It needs to get phased out, and the main reason why is because of that forward secrecy piece that I mentioned, where you want to make sure that any message exchange that you have retains being encrypted. RSA does not support that. So you really want to look at elliptical curve. Bulk cipher encryption algorithms. The main takeaway here is that any of these older ones like DES, RC4, triple DES, from a PCI standpoint, triple DES you should not be using, but you should be making sure you use AES 128, AES 256, and there's some other ones too. There's some nuance, but those are the main ones. Message authentication hashes.
Hold on a second, aren't those pretty hackable too, though?
What's that?
256, AES?
No, they're not. So
I just downloaded a class and it was just telling me how to do it.
I would let's talk about that after. I'm curious what the messaging around that is. Here's the other piece is those AES 128 and 256, they can be decrypted, but it might be done through a side channel attack. So not the actual data that's encrypted, but something else that gives you the information to decrypt the data. So it's something that gives you the key that then allows you to decrypt the data. So that's what it could be. Message authentication hash, I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, where you want to make sure it's SHA-2. So all of these things come together to form a cipher suite. The main piece here is when you're configuring a server, what you want to make sure is that the clients who are visiting your site will also have the cipher suites that you use. So you want to make sure that you're using a broad pool. Otherwise, somebody who's visiting your site might not actually be able to visit your site. So if they're using an older browser, like if they're using Windows XP and IE6, they might not actually be able to get to your website. So if you have, say, clients on your e-commerce site that may be using older browser versions, that's something to pay attention to. So you can look at that at like, your Google Analytics or anything like that, what browser types are being used.
But a lot of end users are using an older browser, using an older computer, using an older model.
You know what? It's not as much as like what you would expect. So most I think like Windows XP is less than 1% of the internet traffic. So, but again, if you're running an e-commerce site, you need to look at your specific information because, right, you might have clients or customers that are using older browsers, and then you need to take that into consideration. Finally, a couple other things to watch out for: mixed content issues. I don't know if anyone's seen this, where and this is with Chrome. Sometimes you'll see it where it says secure and then HTTPS. If everything on the website is secure, if everything on the website is not delivered using HTTPS, you'll get this little eye in a circle, and that means it's a mixed content issue. What that actually means is that, how I showed it here, where if you're sitting in a coffee shop, somebody has access to this access point, you see the eye, that means they can add in data to the website because there's one element in there that's delivered via HTTP, so that can allow them to manipulate or send malware or maybe mine cryptocurrency or anything like that by visiting that site. So this is definitely something to watch out for. A lot of people kind of ignore it, and a lot of people have some problems with that, with whether it's images and how WordPress delivers images. There's some configuration tweaks that you can make to your WordPress site.
There's a plugin called Really Simple
There's a plugin as well.
It just fixes that
Yep.
as soon as you click it.
Exactly.
So
So
if you're doing web development, and you're doing like production stuff, and you know, maybe have a fake URL, just to do something live and not local, and then you go put it on a real URL, and some of those cached images
Yep.
in the theme are the IP number, which is HTTP.
Yep.
You have the,
exactly.
so then you have to go to why no padlock and go do a whole thing and go back in. I mean, it's good for building the client by hour. So I'm not saying that you should do that, but that happens inadvertently sometimes.
I'm telling you, the Really Simple SSL plugin
Yeah.
solves
There's
that.
a plugin that you can get if you have access to your htaccess file. You can do a redirect, so any request
Right.
over 80 gets redirected to 443. Right. There's different things that you can do there. Finally, one other item: if you have like a virtual server or a that you're fully managing, make sure that you're paying attention to crypto library vulnerabilities. I don't know if anyone heard of the Heartbleed vulnerability, or there's been some other ones where the actual library that's doing the encryption had some issues with it, which then could cause data to get decrypted. And so you want to make sure that those libraries are constantly updated.
Heartbleed was what, 2 years ago, right?
It was like 3 or 4, something like that. Yeah. Finally, here's a quick way on how to implement. This is set up for Nginx, but if you look at it, you can see where you're setting your SSL protocols for TLS 1.1 and TLS 1.2, and then here are the ciphers that you use. So this is elliptical curve ciphers, AES 256, 128. This one, right? Yeah. Oh no, this one is saying not to use triple des. This one's also saying not to use. I don't know, I can't remember that, and not to use MD5. So
where does it get inserted?
This will go in Nginx in the default config file if you use Nginx in front of your Apache web server. There's a similar configuration if you're making that change directly in Apache. If you're using Windows, it's a different configuration setting. There's some Googling that you would need to do.
Now, is Nginx more secure over the other?
It's all on how you configure it.
Okay, so
Nginx is more of an acceleration engine that sits in front of Apache. So Apache can serve up so many, requests. Nginx speeds that up, basically.
is that what Kinsta uses? That what they're using?
Who?
Kinsta.
I don't know.
You never heard of it?
No. Here's the other one. So if you go here, this will give you, so mozilla.github.io will give you how to do an SSL configuration for your web server. So you can just go there. Finally, this is what you've been waiting for. How do you test it? So there's a site, I love it. It's called SSL Labs. It's ssllabs.com. You go here and this is one that I just ran earlier today. You can put in any website, your own, anyone else's, and you can see how they have their website configured. So here's some interesting items. If we maybe
I always get A-.
here we go. Here's some sites that I was looking at earlier today. This one is actually PayPal, and I was shocked by this. But PayPal has a vulnerability. It's vulnerable to the robot vulnerability. I don't actually know if it's PayPal or if it's a load balancer that sits in front of PayPal's website. I'm not sure. But the way SSL Labs is configured, if you have a vulnerability, it automatically gives you an F as your rating. So that's an interesting thing. You can also see if you look here, the Cipher suites. So these are all the things that I talked about, the different configuration. When you put in your own site to SSL Labs, you can see all the protocols up here, all the Cipher suites that are configured, and how that works. And also it will identify some different types of vulnerabilities as well in your SSL.
Will that score you if you're going through unencrypted? If you go through
It will not. It's only looking for HTTPS. So you'll get an error message if it's an HTTP site.
So what if you have what if you're connected on a wireless device or something like that, a carrier, or a coffee shop? If this doesn't, you don't want to do any of that through bad connections.
So SSL Labs is actually going directly to the server. So what it's doing is
They're going directly to the server.
they are going directly to the web server, not your computer. You're just making the request for them to go here.
Okay.
So that's a direct connection from SSL Labs. But yeah, here's some other interesting things. Like here's one that I saw: Steam. If anyone uses Steam to game on their PCs or anything like that, this was actually an error message that they had because their certificate here. So if you go to just steampowered.com, that certificate and all of its subject alternative names was not associated with steampowered.com. It was everything else other than, so it was a misimplemented SSL certificate. And this happens with big players, this happens with small players. That's why this SSL Labs site is.
That's what the team means. You got there.
What's that?
The team means you got there.
The T means, right, that you don't trust the certificate because there was an error in matching up the domain name against what the certificate was issued for.
Would you know? Would you send them a note to their web host?
I mean, you can. Sometimes it gets immediately addressed, and sometimes it gets ignored. So it just depends on who you're dealing with. So I think I have one more item here to show you guys. SSL Labs, and then a recap. So we talked about something like this. Strongest 256-bit encryption. It could be, the way I read it, this is more of a server configuration because the certificate that you're buying is not an elliptical curve certificate. So this is an example of bad marketing. Because really you should be seeing, if you're getting an RSA certificate, something like 2048 bit or SHA-2, like how it's marketed here. This, as we talked about earlier, the DB, the EB certificates may be unnecessary because it doesn't improve your encryption. It's just more of a marketing thing.
More of a branding.
Yeah, marketing, branding, anything like that.
So people are going to want all three.
Some people might want it, yes, but it will not change the encryption that you're making.
Right.
Yep. So, and that
it makes the client happy. They're happy.
Right.
it is cool to see the green as opposed to just a headline. I can be reached at chris@letsfixsecurity.com or on Twitter, where's Wilken. Free to reach out, ask me any questions that you have.
I think your domain is the
Thank you.
Let's
Appreciate
fix
it.
security. That's like, we know it's broken already. Let's fix it.
That's right.
So how come we're not all jumping on blockchain?
It depends on what you're referring to blockchain because.
Well, it just seems that would replace all this bullshit real easily.
No, it does not. So conceptually, blockchain is really just a distributed database, right? So you still have to make those encrypted connections that would use SSL encryption to make those exchanges with the database. So it's not a right. And I always get wary of those blockchain as a solution because no, why use blockchain when a database would do? Because it's basically the same type of data storage. Now, is there any merit in having a public ledger and things like that? Maybe. There's some views that maybe you don't want your information to be public, and there's some value in not having that information public. So I don't know if anyone read the indictments.
Today it's saying that these cryptocurrencies are getting hacked very much.
There's that, but a lot of the cryptocurrencies that get hacked is bad implementation of security at the cryptocurrency companies. If anyone read the indictments that came out on Friday, it was really interesting how they were able to trace the funding of websites through cryptocurrency mining and where that cryptocurrency was spent. Because I know that one of the cells of cryptocurrency is anonymization and untraceable, but somehow it was able to be traced.
So, thanks, it's been great. Could you give us a little feel? So people want to have SSL certificates so
Yes.
that they have HTTP2 to speed up their data flow, but also what is the PCI requirements? Why do we care? Why do we even care?
So there are a lot of PCI requirements. There's, I don't know, is it 200 or 400 different items? I forget. You can go to the PCI standards website to download all of those. Some of those are written very esoterically, and it might give me a call to interpret. But anyway, the whole point for all of the PCI requirements is to protect credit card information, because for a very long time, credit card information hasn't been well secured, and so various individuals or teams of individuals found that they can go and hack different companies or find issues with different companies, harvest those credit card numbers, and then use for various things like booking vacations themselves or buying merchandise and then reselling that merchandise on eBay or anything like that. So so that's the point with PCI. They instead of having the government regulate credit cards, they decided to take it upon themselves and have some standards, and those standards evolve as knowledge and security changes, and that knowledge evolves.
So some of these are like, you have to do best practices, right? Or at least make a good effort to be compliant. So
some PCI requirements are very prescriptive. So like what I was mentioning earlier, the protocols that you use, it is very prescriptive not to use TLS 1.0. You have to use TLS 1.1 or higher. Also the same with the bulk encryption. There's certain ones that you can't use and certain ones that are acceptable. There's other requirements in PCI that say you need to have like a policy or you need to have a process in place to monitor for security events. And that's a little less prescriptive. But anyone who's taking credit cards needs to comply with PCI, whether that's doing a self-assessment or having a qualified company come in and audit the practices that are going on.
First of all, that's not true. If you take credit cards from PayPal, you're exempt from PCI. I've been doing it 14 years. Also, I point of sale payment terminals and SSL and early TLS termination points that connect are exempt and can continue using the SSL and early TLS protocols after June 30th, 2018 deadline. However, they must have up-to-date patches and ensure only the necessary extensions are enabled. I've taken millions of dollars over the internet not being PCI compliant using PayPal. I've used other processors, and when I use any other processor, I have to have PCI compliance, which is one of the many reasons I've walked away from processors. PayPal takes it all off your shoulders, FYI.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a couple of things with PayPal. Are you doing a redirect to the PayPal website when you're taking that credit card?
No, I'm definitely, the customer's logging into PayPal and then returning to our site.
Is that popping up a new browser window that's
No.
going to PayPal?
No.
No? What is it doing?
It's going to PayPal, paying, and then we will turn you to the merchant. If that doesn't happen in 10 seconds, click here.
Okay.
Okay, it's done through a PayPal API call.
Yep. So, there's a little nuance to that one. You as a merchant need to comply with PCI regardless of who's taking the credit card, because PCI compliance exists with the merchant. So that is a.
How come nobody has asked me, and I've been 100% PayPal for 6 years now.
That comes from your acquiring bank. Now, acquiring banks should be asking all of their credit card merchants for their PCI compliance. Not all of them do that.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you're confused because there's no acquiring bank with PayPal. I don't know if you know how PayPal works. It's PayPal. And 90% of my money never sees a bank. It goes to PayPal and it leaves PayPal.
Okay.
There is no bank.
Okay.
There is no acquiring bank. And so there is no PCI. I have 6 figures of customer records and nobody asked me. And I don't have one credit card number. I might have a couple written down for regular customers in a book. But there is no PCI compliance when you're using PayPal to accept credit cards, both with the PayFlow Pro product and there's another Pro product, and I confuse the two, but there is no PCI compliance because they handle all of the information. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay.
And I've tested for this. I've actually had 18 merchants, and I've blogged about this, merchant accounts, and they're all a pain in the ass. Unless you fill out this 20-page form, you can't take credit cards.
Okay,
Literally.
wait a minute, though. I would think it's different if you're clearing using PayPal Pro on your website and you're not logging in, and you're using a Pro merchant, whatever it is. It's the one you pay $30 a month for.
Well, you pay 30. There's 2 of them, but either way, you still have to log into PayPal. And the transaction.
No, you don't. Not if you're clearing it on your website. It's just like
You
Stripe.
always have to log into PayPal.
No, you don't.
Always.
No, you don't.
Show me.
I haven't used that $30 a month in about 5 years since I went to Stripe. But when people were doing PayPal from like Gravity Forms, not a WooCommerce, from Gravity Forms, it's a straight one-click payment. You pay and it processes the payment right there. You don't log into PayPal.
Processes the credit card,
It
correct?
processes the credit card, and
That
that's
is
it.
a PayPal setting within PayPal. It's between you and PayPal. You're correct on that, but you have to tell PayPal.
Oh yeah, you got to go in and configure it on the back end of PayPal. Yeah.
The problem is after you use it, it'll lock you out of PayPal on a regular basis. That's why I don't use it on my site.
Oh, okay, yeah. See, I haven't
It's
used
a
it in
big
years.
problem.
Yeah, and I definitely wasn't doing the kind of volume you talk about. So they probably let me get away with it, with like a little small volume here.
Yeah, if you're just doing a couple $100 bucks.
Yeah.
We do 6 figures annually, and so I watch this really closely.
Yeah.
So
the
the key with PCI compliance and the different levels is the number of credit card swipes that you have, not the dollar value. It's the number of swipes that you have in a given year. Now, I don't know exactly the nuances of PayPal, but the rules from the PCI Council is that if you are taking credit cards, you need to be compliant with
I'm not
PCI.
taking the credit card.
So I don't know what the nuance is with PayPal.
I'm not taking the credit card. PayPal is taking the credit card.
No. What I'm saying though is if you are a merchant taking credit cards, you as a merchant you need to be compliant. Now I don't know if PayPal has been able to define it by saying PayPal am the merchant. I
Two
don't.
separate entities. To take credit cards as a merchant, you need a merchant account and a gateway. Take credit cards and PayPal, all you need is PayPal. You eliminate the gateway,
right.
and then you have the merchant account, which now forces you to become PCI compliant and fill out the stupid form every year.
Well, it's sort of like a Stripe checkout, the little window that pops up, which is an option.
Yes.
That doesn't require that you have to really be PCI compliant, because
That you
all
don't-
of Stripe.
You don't even have to have HTTPS.
No, they want you to have HTTPS.
They do.
Yeah,
They want you to have
They do.
that. If you don't have that, you're gonna run into a problem. Not even proof. You might get away with it.
I think there were previously some PayPal iframes that didn't require to have HTTPS on your site.
Yeah, and the iframes, from a security standpoint, I have some problems with iframes and how that works. I don't know if PayPal's moved away from that or anything like that.
You cannot take money on the internet without HTTPS, and I've been doing this since '02. Unless you're HTTPS, you can't take a dime.
What I meant is that your site could have been HTTP, but when you went to PayPal with HTTPS, everything occurred on that.
I think I've seen some sites where it is that, where the site is not HTTPS, but then you do the redirect to PayPal, and now that's HTTPS.
Yeah, some of them are not actually that until you get into the actual checkout.
There are some sites like that, right? And there's.
I don't understand that at all. I think it's just not one.
It is more a configuration of whoever configured the web application. You should be having it encrypted the entire way, because you could be you can get any of those connections or traffic intercepted throughout until you make that HTTPS connection.
Now, people do know that Google is, I don't want to say penalizing, but it's giving a higher ranking signal for HTTPS. They say that.
I've heard that. I don't know the details of it, but if it sells more people getting HTTPS sites, then that's a good thing.
Yes.
It's an SEO factor.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're saying it is, but I'm sure.
They've been saying it for 4 years now.
Yeah, it definitely is, but the reverse side to that is I'm in a real niche market. I just sell pet supplies for birds, and so there's dozens, hundreds of little websites, and I keep knocking them off because they don't know, don't understand how to do this. Yeah. And I'm seeing all this fresh traffic from sites.
From these other sites?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been kind of a little bounce. There's all these little niche sites, but, they have no idea what's wrong.
You should be getting the big bounce like now.
Yeah.
Like right after.
Well, they just went to the red lettering. It wasn't always red. It was gray up until a couple of weeks ago.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's fantastic.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That's nice.
Chris,
I had configured my browser to the not secure red lettering using the Chrome option in the browser, like at the beginning of the year. So when I would do presentations in front of people and I would go to different websites, it would say not secure. And I would scare the shit out of people, because their websites didn't have HTTPS on it. And I was like, look, this is my browser configuration. It's not going to say that until later this year, which is now. So, but people still didn't know what I was talking about.
They still don't.
Yes.
We're the only ones in the room that know what we're talking about.
If you're doing something with e-commerce, you're probably been at least somewhat educated on HTTPS.
Yeah.
So
sorry to cut you off.
Ken, you had a question.
I just wanted to ask about server configuration, people that are doing WooCommerce sites on shared servers.
Yes.
And things like that. And
so
we should be concerned
about. So my general view, also partially because I understand this well, is if you are doing any type of e-commerce, you probably should not be using a shared server. And the main reason why is because, well, there's a couple of reasons why, but if any of those sites that are on that shared server get hacked, you might also end up getting your site hacked, depending on how that's configured. So that's one bad thing. But also, more importantly, from an encryption standpoint, you may not have the ability to configure cipher suites in a secure manner. Some shared sites, depending when the site was built or depending when the servers were built, may have settings for SSL 2.0 and 3.0, and now you running on that shared server, you're having to accept those configurations.
Now, is that the same with like, are you familiar with Google Cloud and like I say, like the virtual machine and all that? So if I get the virtual machine that has the low price micro or whatever, not the standard, that's all shared at the lower end.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can get VPS really cheap now.
You can get VPS.
But you're better off on dedicated. He was talking about getting hacked. If you have a neighbor on your server that just sends out a knucklehead email and gets blacklisted, the whole IP is blacklisted. I mean, and now you're just shut down. So you want to be dedicated or VPS. I've always been dedicated.
Talking about,
It's a little bit higher though.
Oh, it's a lot higher. I pay $400 a month for one website.
But right, like that is absolutely a great point is, yeah, if that server gets hacked and now it's sending out malware, that could impact your business. Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't shut down your revenue.
Yep.
we're talking about using email, having email on your hosting server, your website server is what you're talking about?
Blacklisting.
Well, that's
Blacklisting.
two different things. I don't let my server use my email. I use Google for G Suite for Gmail. But if you're on a server, a shared server, they squeeze 30, 40 stores, especially if you're on an Indian host, right? You know, they're just cram packed. And one guy sends out an email, his own through Contact or MailChimp, and it gets blacklisted because of its content or what he said, or he bought a list. The whole server gets blacklisted. Your IP address.
Your IP address is blacklisted.
Right.
For everybody on the server.
And the blacklist, so here's the thing, there's two different blacklists. One is a spam blacklist, the other one is a malware blacklist. Either one of those could impact your business.
So being on the malware blacklist obviously is nasty. So someone.
Yeah, MailChimp will shut you down as soon as you get like in spam house.
Yeah, you're done.
They won't tell you what the problem is. They'll just say, well, and then eventually you'll be able to, well, if you pay, free MailChimp. But yeah, he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
This is great. How do we subscribe to your? I mean, all of us need you, so I'm proposing that as a group.
You can
subscription to your business.
Send me an email. You know what? We actually do secure hosting. We also do monthly security scans for clients where we're scanning your website for any security vulnerabilities. Outdated plugins or patches or WordPress or anything like that. Vulnerabilities in your JavaScript code. So yeah, we do that.
You say we, who's we?
My company, I have a team who they help me out with the security scans.
How's your support?
What's that?
How's your support?
You give me a call and I will help you, or
24/7?
myself or somebody else. So
24/7?
if there is an issue, that's what we do. Yes.
I just moved to SiteGround. I skipped over 3 other hosts, and now I'm on SiteGround.
You didn't skip them, you
Yeah,
shut them through.
Yeah.
Fired.
yeah,
You fired them.
yeah. Basically, yeah. I blogged about. I'll send you the piece. It was a nightmare. And I have SiteGround. And they're in Eastern Europe. Oh yeah, Belarus. And I'm telling you, I got a problem, and I'm in chat in 30 seconds. I'm talking about 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I'm hungover.
Yeah, you'll do
Remember.
I mean, really, like you call us, and it's myself.
I'll check out your pricing.
Give us your cards and stuff. Come on, man.
Send me an email. I don't have any business cards, but yeah. No, but that's the thing we do is it's more of the personal touch as opposed to chat or anything. When we get bigger, maybe we'll use that as an option.
I'm on a boutique server now, Petafly. I've known the guy for 12 years.
Oh, yeah?
He's got 500 servers maybe. I mean, that's smaller than SiteGround has 1 million stores, I believe.
Wow.
From what I read.
Wow.
And I was surprised, but I will give you I got a bunch of sites, so.
Awesome.
Prices.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. This was a great discussion.
It's the best week I've been to all year.
Awesome. Great.
Excellent. I'm going to try and put something together in 2 to 3 months. Hey, we're trying to do this every other month, so hopefully we get on track. Keep on
We
track
get
on
a
that.
presentation. How are you going to do that?
I'm going to post this.
You know what? I'll send it to Ken.
I'll post this on the Meetup notes.
Okay.
So, and then I'll make this YouTube
Let's
video
do
live
security.com.
You guys have any special topics? Anything else you guys have on your
So
mind?
we don't have much on the website right now. So we
Pardon me?
Not that I can think of, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I personalized WooCommerce, man.
Yeah. Personalized WooCommerce products.
What's bullshit? It's marketing. I
So what's bullshit?
Yeah.
What are the bullshit plugins or?
Well, just the marketing, how do you get, because I'm gonna tell you, so I've worked for Cisco, I worked for AT&T, and AT&T, one of their stories is that they are one of the largest internet carriers in the world, and so they actually watch all the traffic. So they get on the internet, but I'm sure I believe that, because they have so much shit they buy so often. They scare the crap out of me.
AT&T is pretty scary anyway.
It is, I know, so like I use Verizon as a hotspot, and I feel safer, I don't know, can I get any coffee shop, but I can't actually with VPN anymore, because I don't think I'm a robot.
There are a lot of instances where marketing overwhelms. They're able to make good decisions.